Hey guys, hi. I'm raring to go here. This is one of my favorite subjects. You know, in the New Madrid region, and then the Mississippi ran backward, and and then it rang bells in Boston, because it connected to the East Coast fault line. There's a lot more that goes on. We are going to have a large adjustment because the North American plate is being pulled into a bow with the Aleutian Islands and the tip of Mexico kind of pulled together by the fact that the Atlantic is expanding and the Pacific is compressing. And what this is doing, besides creating lots of booms and cracks and crevasses and that type of thing, is eventually going to be a diagonal pull, because the North American plate is a flat top going from Japan to Iceland, and it cannot roll. It curves as it comes down the Atlantic and wraps around up at the San Andreas, but it cannot roll, so therefore it must rip. And it does rip by having the southwestern part pulled down in southwest, and the eastern part pull up in northeast, which of course rips all the bridges in the Mississippi and will devastate all those cities. We're not just talking up and down the Mississippi and below the St. Lawrence Seaway where the New Madrid fault line curves and goes, and up along, through Savannah and Charleston and up toward Boston and Connecticut. But we're talking about a lot of cities that have not been retrofitted. Yes, and the fault line curves, goes up aiming for Chicago and then turns to the east, but because things are so shaky there with the little fault lines, it's going to devastate Chicago also. It's also going to pull the seaway apart, and we're already having evidence of this stress. For instance, we recently had the Escanaba lights, and Escanaba is a little city on Lake Michigan, on the Michigan Peninsula. People ran out with their video cams, earthquake lights, all colors. Then a transformer exploded, and boom, like a floodlight up into the skies was this tower of light. Well, that's methane gas escaping and setting alight. Methane is lighter than air. It goes up. It burns just as much as natural gas. And these light towers have been seen here and there, around the world as plates are under stress. We've had the Wisconsin booms, Clintonville down toward Baraboo, etc. And definitely the seaway is pulling apart. We could go all the way through Detroit, has a lot of this kind of stuff going on. So it's going to be, we have a wonderful animation that was done for the pole shifting. You can also find it on my website. Click on the left where it says animations, you'll get that page. And it details voiceover by me, and a lot of the details about rock strata and what to expect where, and the sequence of events. There was something else that happened recently too. There was a cluster of quakes in Connecticut, and it was on TV because that is exactly where the east fault line, the East Coast fault line that connects to the New Madrid, runs up and ends at that spot in Connecticut. So this was on the news, and Michelle Kaku, was asked, "What does this mean?" And at some point he said, "A New Madrid," and the host, blanched and turned pale and said, "Oh, can't you give us some good news?" Well, that's how much warning you're going to get from the media. It clearly, we're having precursor bells ringing, so to speak, and we should all prepare, which is kind of the basis of our tonight's discussion. So imagine that something like the New Madrid happens, and your region is completely devastated. The trucks aren't coming in and out, the phones are down, the grid is down, no food delivery, no gas or oil, it all blew up or burned up, or it's not being delivered, and you're sitting there in the dark. And how long do you wait? The cell phones, no, sorry, something like the New Madrid could devastate a wide region. And even though help is on the way, Who knows when it's going to come? It doesn't have to be that way. What I like to do is talk about bare bones. Nobody ever comes to rescue you. Now, what do? You can sit around like a caveman and have a little fire, and by the way, flints are, a fire starting, it's not matches, which you can run out of. You're so often told, here's survivability, you should have this or that or this or that you can buy, and then when you run out of that supply, oh, now what? I'm telling you, you never had that supply to begin with. It's gone. So you have no matches. Did you know that the Bic lighters that people use and then toss away, it's a flint? And long after the liquid is gone, you can go and start a fire with that flint. I have, for $1.59, some flints that my grandmother used to use. Similar, it's a hand squeeze thing. Start the fire in the wood stove, and there it goes. So you can get those at the hardware store, or just hold on to the last Bic lighter that you have, because that's a flint too. That's exactly right. People think of starting fires, oh, you have to get like a little bow and you twirl and all that. You see that a lot, which requires some skill. Well, that's all very well and good, but just having your hands on one of those flints is all you really need. Now, off-grid power supply in general is direct current. We on the grid get alternating current, which allows for high voltage to be sent a long distance. But way back in the beginning of electricity, everything was direct current. Thing about direct current is you need to be 50 feet from the power source, whether that's a windmill or a water mill or whatever. It won't go a long distance. So that has a consideration that if you're going to put up a windmill, it has to be fairly close to the electric lights that you're going to be burning. Now, camping and boating and cars and trucks, they all use direct current. This is already the setup there. Camping equipment, boating equipment, etc. So if you have any equipment like that around, then when you put up a windmill, you don't have to say, well, can my appliances tolerate this? They're all set for that to begin with. The key in creating your off-grid power source, which you're going to throw together from junk, is an alternator. Alternators use a spinning method to generate electricity. This is why when your car starts, the alternator in the car is charging the battery, because as the gasoline is burned, there's a whirring and a motion going on, and it's an electromagnetic thing, whereas it goes around and around the magnet, the wires are generating an electric flow because of the interaction with the magnet. Well, you have an alternator in your car. You also have alternators in various appliances like lawnmowers or electric drills. Anything that's going to go round and round, it takes the electricity, it starts spinning that, and you can reverse that. It's fairly simple. On my site, in the Troubled Times section, energy section, and by the way, on the left-hand side, there's something called Survival Hub. Click on that, and you can't get lost. You just go to the energy section, and there's a gent out in California who created water wheels and used an electric motor in his hand drill, to reverse and wired it up so instead of electricity going into the drill, making the drill go round and around, the water wheel was making the drill go round and round, and the electricity was flowing out the wires to his battery and charging his battery or lighting his lights or whatever. This is not rocket science for somebody who knows basic electronics. And how many people have electric tools in their garage, hand drills or whatever, and these alternators are in every car, which if you've really had a devastation and the roads are torn up and everything has been tossed, you've got a lot of wrecked cars around, and those are all alternators and car batteries too that are just waiting to be rescued and put to good use. Now, Yes, that's right. We're talking about basically lights, because people sitting in the dark is very depressing. It's amazing what turning on the lights will do, for the mood and the like. And just think how empowered you're going to feel when you can take a bunch of junk and turn on the lights. Everyone's going to look to you like you're the hero, and you will be. So wind and water are the power sources. Now, we're talking about everything went away. Nobody's coming to rescue you. The gasoline has run out. Gasoline-run generators, and there's nothing. You do have stuff to burn. You can always find, but then it's like caveman days. You're all huddled around the fire. So wind and water is where the power comes from, not like nuclear power plants and gasoline generators and coal-fueled power stations and it's all like magic. We all think that the food gets delivered in the grocery store and you turn on the switch and the lights come on. It's like nobody thinks of where this comes from and what you would do to replace it. So windmills is a fascinating discussion, and we're not just talking about the thing on a pole that goes around and around with a few blades. We're talking about many variations. One is a turbine. I think is so elegant. It's the Servanius, which is like a twisting coil that goes up and it catches the wind and it turns it in place. It's like a long, curvy tube that is turning, and they don't whack you, with the blades. It's very maintenance free, and it's somewhat, I think, similar to the turbines in steam turbine machines, or perhaps airplane jets, that have that kind of a turbine. So you can actually make this. You have all the parts you need for a windmill from a wrecked car. And the reason I say this is there's the battery, there's the alternator. Now, what are you going to use for your windmill blades or the curved, graceful turbine pole of a Servanius? Hey, what about those fenders? They already have the curve. Remove them from the car, clamp them together. They will catch the wind and turn your turbine. So you have it all in your wrecked car. Something else that can be converted to a windmill is a lawnmower. It's already got the alternator in it. It's already got blades that want to turn, and they're at a slight angle. That's what it takes to catch the wind, is that slight angle, so that the wind catches and pushes, etc., and just reverse the current to where the electricity is coming out the wires instead of going in and pushing the lawnmower. Now, everybody is familiar with windmills that stand up, like the windmill farms, and they have 50 of them on some hilltop, and they're slowly turning, and they generate a lot of electricity. But they're not all up in the air. Something that is fairly easy to build and maintain is what we call the Nebraska windmill. It's at ground level, or in the past they put this up on building tops, to catch the wind, and the part that sticks up above ground is the part that catches the wind, and it pushes it. It's like a Ferris wheel that's half buried, if you will, in the analogy. And you can have that on the ground. It's easy to get to repair, etc. Now you have to worry about cows and little kids kind of walking up and getting whacked. So people would build a little fence around it, to keep the cattle and the kids away, But you dig a hole in the ground, you build this, and it turns around and around. And if it needs repair, or you have a broken paddle, easy enough to get to. You don't have to have a ladder to climb high, and for someone afraid of heights, there you are. So, water wheels, yeah, right. The cow, Bessie, got into the Nebraska windmill. Right. Yeah, Bessie doesn't have to die. Okay. Okay. Indeed, that's a good analogy. You know, the old boats that went up and down the river, you know, with the water wheel at the backside, and of course that was run by something was burning in there, creating steam. It was probably steam power turning that. And while we're talking about steam, this is if you want power, steam, you can like compress it. The old steam engines, you know, used to run railroad cars, you know, and very, very powerful steam engines, turbines, because it's water that's superheated and it wants to expand, and when it does, it's got a great amount of push. Well, let me just say this about that. You know, you can find a lot of diagrams on how to build a steam engine, and maybe you can make yourself a new railroad engine and go across the continent, no matter how much devastation we have after the New Madrid. But steam can be dangerous. It can a steam burn is devastating. So it's just like natural gas, you know, if it explodes or whatever, you have to worry about how you handle it. Okie doke. So now, let's see. The turbines, we were talking about water power. Mm-hmm. You know, when you talk about windmills, and now you switch over to water power, if you have any kind of a difference in height, something that is called high head, where the water comes off a hill and there's several feet drop, you have the ability to generate electricity from the falling water. This can be something as simple as the rain on the roof coming down your gutters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know this sounds silly and trivial, but you get enough of this going on, and if you have a lot of rain, you can in fact generate electricity from the water running down your drains. Mm-hmm. But water wheels, this is go back into antiquity, you know. Look at all the mills that were on the river, and they would take the flow of water and turn the water wheel, grind up the grain, do whatever with that power of the turning wheel. So this is not generating electricity in the old days, but that is the concept. Anything that turns can generate electricity. So other than this kind of make a windmill out of your car parts, or as some gent for the Troubled Times group did on my website, you know, in the Survival Hub, he used tuppers, and he put tuppers in a wheel and ran water so that it turned, and had electric drills on either side that wheel turned. And yes, indeed, he was able to charge his battery with that. So you don't have to have a water wheel. You don't have to have big paddles, a big fancy apparatus. You can use junk. The concept of the turning, you know, and using an alternator, which are really rather prevalent considering that practically everybody has a car these days. You know, you're gonna have everything that you need. So crank. Now, what if you don't have wind or water? Let's say you're sitting around in the dark, and somebody has, you know, and you haven't gotten around to building a windmill yet, you know, from a broken car. But you got a bike, and you can set up a rig where instead of you're pumping legs, turning the wheel, which is on the concrete, and away you go, zooming down the block, you're up a little bit on some platform, and as you pedal away, that wheel is turning, and guess what? You're cranking electricity again. You're turning that alternator that's charging the battery, and now you have lights. Okay, so maybe you have, you know, a movie device that just needs a little electricity. I don't know, VCR, DVD, whatever, you know, and it doesn't, and it has been adapted for direct current. There are adapters, you know, or lights, you know, camping, boating lights, and somebody sits on the bike and pedals away. Now you're getting your exercise, but you have lights, and you can charge your battery that way. There's a lot of crank devices that the military uses. for instance, shortwave radio. You know, you've seen some of these old-fashioned movies where somebody out in the field takes their radio up and they're rah, 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 rah. Yeah. And what they're doing is generating a little bit of electricity and some temporary battery, and then they can talk on their radio. Well, there are radios that you can buy for shortwave, which is the emergency frequency, by the way, worldwide. You know, when everything goes to heck, that's what the emergency crews use, is shortwave. And I know our volunteer fire department has a big antenna sticking up, and that's what they're using. You know, when everything else goes away, shortwave is where it's at. You can get these generating radios that just need to be cranked, and now you can talk shortwave to your neighbors, etc. Crank devices. There's also some where they squeeze. You know, you need some lights. There's little LED bulbs, etc. on a flashlight, and as you shake it or squeeze it, you're generating some electricity from some motion, and it lights that flashlight enough that you can stumble through the brush, etc. Crank devices. Look into it. Now, what about gasoline? It's all gone. Your natural gas is gone. You got nothing. What do you do? Let's say you have a road and you have a car that runs, but there's no gas. Well, of course you can't just do this in 5 minutes, but have you ever heard of wood gas? Guess what? In World War II, in Western Australia, Finland, and other countries, where there was a shortage of gasoline, people converted their vehicles, the outback of Australia, etc., to burn wood gas. On my website, you know, in the Survival Hub, you go in there, you can find wood gas diagrams. Ali of Finland had the original specs from an old Volvo that he was driving, and it had this big clunky thing on the back of his car in which he would put in wood shavings, and away he would go, 50 miles an hour he could get. It wasn't like Speed Demon, but it worked. Now, these wood gas burners, they do tend to get gunky. You have to worry about cleaning them out. It's not quite as clean as gasoline, but it works. In any case, all the instructions are there. You can pull them down, print them off. So, let me think. Now, what else have I got on my list? Solar power. Solar panels, never a loss. I'm not real familiar because I don't use them, but I am told that even on cloudy days you can generate electricity from solar panels if you have enough of them, etc. And I believe Usaebn provided a diagram from the Go Sun company, which shows using mirrors that capture sunlight in a curved array around some veggies, and cooking their vegetables with nothing more than solar power bouncing off the mirrors and focusing on the veggies. Mirrors can increase. Yeah, we can count on that one. That's right, yes. Very, very good find. You know, mirrors do, you know, and there's a lot that can be done with solar power, you know, like even creating good drinking water. Like, let's say you're along the beach. I know that there are people who say, you know, they create something where the sun is heating some salt water, you know, in a shallow pool on the beach, and capturing the fog, you know, the mist that rises from that, and distilling it, you know, having it run against plastic, which cools it, and then drip down somewhere. Whatever dripped down is not salt water anymore, and this is basically using solar power. You know, so there's a lot of techniques that are worthy of looking into, because you can count on the sun being there, right? Well, what about methane gas? We hear about it as, oh, it's exploding, and the permafrost, you know, up in Siberia has got these methane pockets going poof or whatever, and but you know, it can be to your advantage. Now, here again, like with steam power, It's like natural gas. It's very explosive. You don't treat this casually. It's not like a block of wood that you're going to make a fire out of. That's controllable. Methane can explode, and think of it as natural gas. But I talked to, years ago, and recorded an interview in the BBS series with a guy that cooked his dinner every night with methane gas that he got from a big tub, like a 5-gallon tub, where he had rotting whatever in there, and he'd have a little tap on the top, and he would turn the tap and over to the stove, and then he would cook dinner, and then he would turn the tap off. So he actually just generated the gas he needed for his gas stove every day. So there's a lot of use of methane on farms, hog farms or dairy farms or whatever, where they have a lot of manure, and they put this into, they capture it, and with some big balloon mechanism, and then they run it into something that they burn that methane, and they don't pay for their electricity. They've got it made. Now, this is a big rig. You have to have a farm. I'm sure they pay quite a bit of money to have that set up. But this is an example of what can be done. Just to put some ideas in your head as to, if you're sitting there in the dark, and you're worried about cooking your food, and you're worried about lights and the like. These are ideas. You do not have to say, when are we going to be rescued, and get depressed. You can make your own way and feel good about it. And then when they finally show up and rescue you, you say, what took you so long? Now I have one last thing, and that's talking about light bulbs. Light bulbs break, and they burn out. Now LED lights, which are those tiny little colored things that turn red and green and indicate whether your appliance is on or off, and they last forever. And there are people that take all those little lights and they make a big array, like a 2x4, board cover with these little LEDs, and run electricity in, and at least you get some sort of a dim light off of that. Yes, but that's not what people really mean by a light bulb. Well, guess what? At the turn of the century, and I'm really talking about 1900, not 2000, the streets of London were as bright as day because they used carbon arc lamps. Well, what the heck is that? Well, they were used, and may still today be used in movie making, because the light is so intense and full spectrum, which is important for growing indoor gardens. Full spectrum light is required by plants in order to really thrive. And what this is two pieces of graphite, such as in pencil leads, that are brought fairly close. There's a little bitty gap there. Direct current is run, and it arcs from one tip of that pencil lead or graphite or whatever to another. And this guy in California, bless his heart, he would try all this stuff. It wasn't enough to just write about the theory. He would build these things and try these things, and he tried that. I said, do I understand correctly that we could use pencil leads? Because a lot of drafting stores and the like, they have endless amounts of this for people to put into their pencils, and not the kind that are wood, where that would work too, and he said, yes, it does work. And apparently this was something that children have been known to gimmick around with, in their bedrooms, like chemistry set kind of things, to try to, hook it up and see if they could get this arcing flash of light, and they would get it. Now, this arcing eats that graphite tip. So what would happen in London is they would have maintenance people go out, put the ladder up, and open the carbon arc lamp and push those little tips closer together, and then go on down the street, because it eats it. It consumes it. But you can make a light bulb that's like sunlight equivalent, light as day. If you have graphite, you know where else graphite is found? Old battery cores. You know, probably your nearby landfill is filled with them. And that's graphite. You know, so right there you have a handy supply of graphite for carbon arc lamps. And I believe that ends my list of, it's all there for you in junk, you know, in the junk that's around you. I know the tornado came through town and it threw everything all over and nothing works, and you're at, you know, and you're tired of sitting around in the dark and everyone's so depressed. So get resourceful and turn on the lights. Right. I have a little wood burning stove. Yeah. Yeah, I don't use it, but I've got it in my kitchen. I think I paid $500 for it about 10 years ago. Why not have one handy, right? Oh, you can, yes. Yes, you can find that on my website. On the left-hand side is a pink menu bar. You know, if I have interviews, it's what's new up toward the top. Click on that, and one of the options is interviews. It takes you to my channel. Also, videos will take you to my YouTube channel. And I am going to put this interview on a YouTube channel, and along with pictures. Zetatalk.com, ZETATALK.com. Survival Hub is into the troubled times stuff.